Alright folks, welcome to this exciting video where you once again join me in the wild landscape of Scotland. And for today's adventure, I've come to a location I've never been to before on a video, and I actually got tipped off about it just this morning, well this afternoon actually, before I kind of left the house. So here we are to explore it. We're actually up Glen Esk today, and there's actually an abandoned farm croft up here. There's a whole abandoned village apparently up here on the hill, and I was given rough directions, like roughly where it was, and here we are. I've managed to see it in the distance, I believe. So I'm going to head on up and document the history. Never seen before potentially on YouTube, especially never seen before on my channel folks. So let's get into this adventure. I'm just going to try and dodge this livestock and sheep and stuff that's over here. But it looks like there might actually be a track which takes me up to the ancient wonder. I was thinking that it might be up on like top of a hill or whatever, but what I'm seeing so far, it looks like the structure's literally down at the same height as the road roughly here. So it's incredible up here at Glen Esk, because these hills at this time of year are covered in the purple heather, and it's just incredible to see them with the dark green colour of the ferns between it. It's just a magical scene folks, and there's just nothing but sheep out in these fields today. It looks like they graze this land here where the abandoned village actually is. And it's so special to see places like this. Obviously, like, if I've never explored somewhere before, I just absolutely love finding new places and seeing things that I've never seen. And often like as I explore these places, I'm just uncovering the wee layers of history just to tell a story of like forgotten history basically in these areas. And I'm just hoping that the sheep obviously didn't attack me here folks. I'm going to just be highly respectful of the livestock in this area, and I'm just going to follow this track up the side. There's actually a sheep here as well, so I'm just playing it cool right here folks. There's actually a wee stream and stuff as well. So on these adventures I always come with the greatest respects, like the landowners and the owners of the sheep here and stuff like that. We're always following the countryside code, respecting obviously the fact that the sheep here, you never want to be upsetting livestock. But it's cool to come into these lands and document the history that's on show. Often every year it falls down more and more, and as the years progress it almost disappears forever. Sometimes the mad like layers of stone that's there, they just get covered up by like the debris and the greenery I should say, as all these plants grow each year. Wow, what a special sight this is folks. Just think how long ago this old dike line was put in, and this was potentially the old main road to the village here. The main road would have come up Glen Esk here behind me, and then straight up this hill. Wow, it's mad just to imagine like how it looked originally, instead of thinking of it like how it is today. Just imagine how it was back maybe in like the 1500s or the 1600s. Places like this would have been thriving in the land. There would have been families and a proper community in an area like this. And compared to some of the other like abandoned crofts and things that I visit, this place has just got so many different walls and different sections. So here we are folks, we start at the outer perimeter line of this ancient abandoned village on the hill, and just look how much stone construction we can see from here. This whole area. And I'm just interested because that burn goes right down the hill, so it's interesting to see how they've managed to navigate the burn through their site, and it looks like it's been coming down the side of this wall. Maybe a wee village like this, it would have had like a water wheel, probably using the power of the water to mill their grain and their wheat, and then they would have had cows and chickens, and you can imagine there was probably other types of job this being an abandoned village, there would have been all sorts of little shops and different things. Sometimes I believe piles of stones like this look like they've been dumped as the land's been cleared for agriculture in the area. I believe that's where these stones here have come from. Whereas some of these other stones are actually buildings. I was just thinking there, folks, I thought when I looked down, I just started thinking about an adder because I heard a noise. And that's one animal you have to watch out for in these lands. You get adders slithering about, and if you stood on it, it could try and nip you. Yeah, look, all these stones here I believe have been dumped at a certain time from probably the fields in this area. Because it looks like they've been just brought up and then tipped, maybe with a little trailer or whatever on this line. But I believe before those stones were dumped and tipped, I believe there may have been structures here or little buildings. Check this out. You can just imagine some of this could have potentially been the people's houses and stuff here. Look at it. We've got an outline of a wall leading in with this door, and then this has been a separate little like building here or a room. It's interesting to imagine it with like the wooden roof on the top of it, and then they maybe had like flagstones or whatever on the top of that for like a stone roof. Years ago when a thing like this was built, it would have just been used like, they would have just used the materials which were available to them on the hill. Yeah, it's almost like this area here has been for agriculture. Just thinking like with the shape of this here and the way the walls are actually built. But then they do say if it's actually for sheep and stuff, the walls are less likely to have right angles like that, because when you're rounding up the sheep obviously would go into the corner and it's harder to round them up. So a lot of the old stone sheep pens have actually got the rounded edges for that reason. So it is interesting to see these. Just think how long ago these stones were like laid here, and think what the person was like wearing that put that there. What were they doing? What were they thinking? The world all around must have been so different back then. Maybe a lot more trees and wild vegetation out on this land. Sometimes the folk that settled at villages like this would have been some of the first people in the land. And this could have been the houses that they built with the stone from these hills. Settled down, and then years and years passed. It was probably a thriving little village. Most likely heavily based around the agricultural scene. But I'm sure they would have done all sorts. Probably making even like their own clothes and stuff like that from the wool of the sheep. They would have been spinning it. This is like some outer perimeter wall here of the site, and I can see there's so many internal walls, so I'm just thinking I'll go over and take a look at these buildings over here. I'll just gradually work my way up this area and we'll see what history remains, folks. I just love seeing things like this. Often the more you explore, the more details you notice. By the time you leave a site like this, you can often like paint a true picture of like how it was for the people that lived at these old times in Scotland. You have to think there would have been all sorts of little buildings and little businesses within an area like this. And you just have to imagine there would have probably been like a little pub or a drinking den of sorts, and they would have been making the beer out of their barley, fermenting their early alcohols of the day, and there was probably some mad parties. You can imagine the music coming out of one of these rooms here, the singing and the shouting. Look at this, I believe this here has been a family dwelling of sorts. Looks like it's been a house, and it looks like the door has been here. I would say this here has been the entrance. And an interesting detail with this old building, folks, check this out. That's like a natural bench which has actually been constructed like into the wall. I'm not sure, that could be an original floor height there, and the flagstones was maybe strongly constructed in like that. But I would say it's more likely that's been some feature external, like on the external wall. And it's just mad to think about. I'm not going to sit on it in case I knock the wall down, because it looks pretty precarious there. But it's right at the height that you would expect like a seat to be at. So interesting here, folks. And then look, this must be another little house here. From what I'm seeing, it looks like this could have almost been like a main street leading up the side here. Yeah, this is amazing, folks. I just love seeing places like this. Thinking of the history and the years that's passed since they were in their prime. I'm taking a good look every now and again to make sure there's no ticks crawling about, because this is obviously prime tick landscape. But the one thing that is going in our favour, whoa, sun just flew right into my face just a bit. But yeah, the one thing that's going in our favour is this is heavily grazed with sheep, and they actually take the ticks away off the land, which is a good thing if you're exploring. Look at this as well. Here's another interesting feature. There's multiple, like that's a large external wall on the site, but then in here, look, it's all been built up and landscaped. The wall leads right around here. So you can just imagine the folk maybe coming around here on their horse. This would have been somebody's house here. Maybe they would have been sitting cooking or whatever, and they'd be looking out saying, oh, there's Davy away past on his horse or whatever. And you would see the people coming all the way up the glen. Just imagine when a village like this got abandoned. It could have been for any reason, but a lot of the time it was when the English came up and cleared everybody out of their homes, and they gave the land to the rich nobles in the area, and a lot of these places got burnt to the ground and the people got kicked out. A lot of them got killed or whatever. It was just savage times, folks. Other times villages and people just moved on. The community was no longer needed, and sometimes villages like this can just be like too remote and too far away from the modern way of life. Maybe the land was taken on by a bigger local farm or even sold on. But when you see a whole village like this, it makes you think it's less likely just to be a family or whatever that's moved on. It's more likely to have been burnt to the ground. You can imagine the horror in that moment, the people getting kicked out of their homes back at that time. And when I look around, it's just savage to see what remains of these walls. They're just all around. Pretty much right now, I'm in the middle of the town here, in the middle of the village. And look, this has been quite a deep little side room here on the side of this house. It's almost about the size that you would expect if you had like a water wheel pit, which is interesting to see, but it could have literally been any type of building. I wonder how deep down that goes. If you think about the hundreds of years that's passed since a thing like this was abandoned, you just have to imagine how grand and tall these walls were originally. And they've done such a good job. The stones are properly flat and well constructed. And yeah, this is just so interesting to see it. You just imagine the man that put that stone in there, or the constructor of the house. Life was just so different back at that time. It's just crazy. And each place I look, there's just little rooms, separate little buildings. Each one's probably got a story to tell. Yeah, I think I'll take a look at this building first, and then we'll take a look at this little side room over here. Even this here has been a proper construction. A lot of the time with stuff like this, it's just so far gone, you can hardly see original details. There's definitely been a door going in there, but I believe this could have been a double house or a double building, because you can see there's another opening right here. And look at this, this is strange, because this is kind of like a cut-in piece, so you can imagine there was maybe like a blacksmith or whatever in this area with a roof over it, and you could imagine them in here working away, maybe shoeing the horses or whatever for the village. But there's an interesting feature within this corner of the room here, folks. Look at this, this is the first interesting feature we've really seen here today. Check it out, wow. Look, there's a hole goes away in there, it's just full of spider webs. Yeah, that's so interesting, like that's been properly constructed with this miniature like lintel stone and stuff like that. What would the purpose have been? Maybe something was stored in there and then it was hidden with like a facing board or whatever, and if somebody attacked, the boy would come down, grab the weapon out of here. Maybe it was the village armoury in this place here. Or maybe that was where the boy stashed his money. It's just interesting to theorise often the wee stories of the history as we walk around. And we imagine like what each thing may have been. It's crazy often how you can figure out some little historical nuggets. Look at this. This stone here has been freshly moved. So that shows somebody's been up here properly, like digging that out for some reason. And I'm really not sure which stone it's been. Looks like this one's been buried recently. But this wall looks like it's freshly fallen down here at this section. You can see the difference in the colour of the stones. And you have to imagine when these houses were built, they would have had that rich, red, vibrant look to them before all the years of the mosses and the weather making them this darker grey colour that we see today. And this is another interesting little room here. Another section which has freshly probably been tumbled down by the sheep as they make their way over this wild hill. And then I believe that's been some kind of little grazing pasture or a field in this area. It's almost like it's been a collection of like little croft houses. Even though it's been a village, each village house has had its own little field. That's what I'm seeing here, and it's super interesting. We'll go and take a look at this building at the end here, because it kind of stands on its own and it looks like a square, not a rectangle, which is unusual for these old Scottish constructions from this era. I'm just thinking also the way this wall steps in, like it's been a little business or even a shed of sorts. It's similar to the first thing we looked at down there where the wall steps in. It's just, it was a lot smaller. You have to imagine as well, like what sort of jobs may have been in a village like this. There was maybe somebody like with one of those spinning wheels sorting out the wool, and they'd be making the clothes. There was maybe a boy making some shoes with some of the leather or whatever they'd gotten from the cows. And then there was probably maybe like other shops, or maybe just like trading areas where whatever produce the people had, whether it be milk or butter, cheese or eggs, they could maybe come and sell it, like to their neighbours. You can imagine them with the potatoes and the tatties, wherever you're from. Around here we would call them tatties, but like that was probably a popular eating like food of an area like this back in the day. This is insane. Look at this wall here, folks. It's been constructed. You have to imagine this when it was finally built as well. It's like this wall's been built into this section and it just seems different to all the rest. Yeah, that tree, you just have to think as well, that tree wasn't even there, and look at the size of it. It's an absolute monster of a tree, and that goes to show as well, like the years and years it's passed since this was built. It's just blowing my mind, folks. I actually had no idea this was here, even though I've driven up this road loads of times. But it wasn't until I thought to look for it that I actually saw it. And look at this here, that's one of those stones with the crazy ore through it. Yeah, this must have been what I was theorising was like some grazing lands or whatever. Because I can see there's a separate field and even like more houses over the brow of this hill here. It's crazy the size of this site here, folks. It's probably been a big village for its era. So look at this, folks. You can just imagine, here's the rear window. That's directly opposite what I was thinking was the door at the other side, and that would make sense. They would have had that bit of light coming in the window there, and you just have to imagine they wouldn't have had glass back at that time. So they maybe had some sort of like wooden shutters. And I believe this has been a similar deal here. Probably the bottom of the window here, little wooden shutters or whatever, just to keep the heat in or to keep the air fresh within the dwelling. And look, you can see this house here has been built on at a later time because the wall is a completely separate construction. And that shows you how a site like this was continuously growing and it was getting built upon for their needs. Maybe as the town got bigger, more buildings were needed like this. The small house was put on the end Maybe the family in here got sick of their kids once they grew up and they says, there's a couple of houses there for you. They were in peace and quiet by that time. So I'm back out in the high street of this little town, and I can see there's a house stands here right at the top of the road. That must have been the house like most central to the village here, and I'm not sure if it held any like significance or importance. Maybe that was like the chief of the village's house. You can just imagine maybe like the clan chiefs and things that would have run a village like this. Maybe not only farming and stuff in the area, but out hunting in the wild lands around here. Probably with their bow and arrows and their spears. You can just imagine teams of them maybe coming back with a hunt. Just like nowadays, like there'll be a lot of game animals that get shot regularly or whatever, but back at this time they wouldn't have had shotguns and stuff. It would have been probably like, I would say, bow and arrow and spears and stuff like that. Check this out here as well. The wall looks like it's leaning to the extreme. But another interesting detail, even though they're both dry stone construction, the houses are built so differently from the external walls. And that's often a giveaway sign of if it's been a house or a shed or whatever. You can see here the wall's been busted out at a different time, maybe by shooters or whatever, or gamekeepers in the area, maybe even the farmer or the shepherd. That's the thing, areas like this are always changing and developing. Even nowadays it's prime agricultural land here at Glen Esk. Look at it here, some of these stones, they're just hanging on. You can see the last remains of the door here. And this has been a grand house here at the top of the high street. It's almost like it's had a fireplace or whatever at this end. But there's no sign of like actual chimneys and stuff like that, so I'm guessing there was some sort of like fire where the smoke was just going out maybe a hole in the roof or whatever. Because normally if there's been a fire, one of the end walls is like more obvious or more clear that that's what it is. That's why I'm thinking this site predates like 1700s and 1800s. This is super old, like I would say 1500s or even before it for sure. And I just imagine it when the smoke's coming out of the fires and you would just hear the community, probably the noise of the animals and stuff. And then one day it's just gone. I can just hear the river at the bottom of the hill. And just check out here folks, look at the size of these stones. Look at that, it's just balancing on in there. It's been a grand facing stone of its time. Compared to some of the other walls that we've seen that's sandstone, some of the house stones are actually that different type of rock with quartz and stuff throughout it. Look at this, here's the remains of a little window. It's just so cool to see. I'm always just like blown away when I go to these places. They're all so different from different times. And they've all got their own little individual story of the history to tell. And you just never know what's round the corner sometimes. Crazy abandoned nuggets of Scotland out here folks. And I'm just basically following around the perimeter here of this building just to see if there's any details. A lot of the time I'm noticing the internal side of the houses is deeper than the external, and that could have been right enough. Some of them were probably like partially underground, and that helped with the heating and things in the cold winters and the cold weathers. Yeah, this one's also had these little rooms here on the outside. You can see the rectangle here from it. Probably each one maybe even had a horse stabled at the end of the house, tied up, ready for when they had to go to town. The next town. Maybe if they were going to market or whatever. It's just hard to imagine because it's such a long time ago. It's like a different culture. Like the modern way of thinking probably doesn't think about all the things they would have been doing. So it's just a madness folks. It's a real ancient history of Scotland here. And it's hardly documented. Hardly seen on YouTube to this degree. And just check out this here, wow, this is just mad. Look at the way this stone here is like balanced. It's like a tiny little door. See, this shows it could have actually been an animal shed in here. Wow. Surely this wasn't the size of their front doors originally. No way. Look at this, folks. Like, what was even going on with that right there? That is a mad scene of abandoned Scotland right there, folks. And I just love to see it. The character of those stones there, just putting up with all the wild weather here on the hill. All the wild winters. Just insane. Think how long ago things like this was laid. It's just blowing my mind right now, folks. Often I'm lost for words, believe it or not. It's just when I see this much stuff. The village just continues on. It looks like the edge of the fields. And it just continues on up that way. It's just mad, like, how big this site is. I've literally been walking around it for ages now, and I'm not even at the other end of it. It's bigger than some of the current villages probably in Scotland. And to think about what a community it must have been way back at that time. They probably had all the latest of technologies in that era. And I just love seeing, like, this wee door. And it's just insane, folks. Just think about them sitting around here, maybe waiting on the big bowl of, like, stew or whatever cooking. And just think what they may have been pondering. It's just crazy. It's almost like travelling back in time when you come to a site like this. And the walls are so thick and strong, even though they've obviously tumbled to a certain degree. The walls are like 3 foot thick in places, and you can see the size of the stones which they were constructed with. That's like 6 or 7 people you would need to even lift that or move it. I think even with like 6 people you'd be struggling to lift that right there. I'm going to take a wee walk along this fence line just so I can have a look up and make sure there's no like abandoned history that I'm missing. You can see the thickness of the wall at that side. It's just insane, folks. So normally, folks, it's a house or a croft or a farm, and today it's an ancient abandoned village. And it's just a great example, like, you just never know what is around the corner and what you're going to find next. I've still got this half of the village over here to go and check out. I've just been blown away so far with what I've seen, and it's so cool to record these buildings because, like I say, like every year the sheep's probably running over them, knocking more and more of the stones down. Each time the stones fall down, the history is a little more ruined and gone than what it was before. But these videos just keep that history alive, and you can see how it was at a certain time. You can see where the stone remains of the buildings were. And then this has been some kind of double building at this side, but I don't believe this has not been a house because you can see the different stone construction here. The houses are built differently for sure. I'm also looking at this other side of the fence here because there's mad like stone piles here as well. I believe there's definitely been a building there. And there's actually tracks lead you right way up the hill there. This is insane, folks. It's so humid today. It's just unbelievable out here. I put the coat on because it is actually spitting with the odd raindrop today, and I wasn't sure of the conditions, so I just threw the coat on. But now in hindsight, it's so humid. Yeah, this is an interesting building here because you can see where the entrance has been. Oh, I was about to say there had been no sign of windows, but actually in hindsight there's actually a square cut out here, potentially. And it looks like it's the same at that end. Wow, let's take a look. I'm trying to just kind of navigate a route here, which is the least like overgrown route. Also, I'm trying not to stand on any of the dry stone construction because some of it just looks like it's ready to fall down. Yeah, I can see there. I thought there might have been a window, but it's maybe just fallen down. Look at this. There's an old cast iron fire hearth there, folks. I wonder if that dates back to the ancient times of this house, or if it was just brought here. I wonder if it came from one of these houses. There's actually a pattern on it, but it's too far gone to see really what is going on with it. Wow, that's an interesting little artefact though. You have to think there could have also been maybe shepherds and things up here, though. Maybe camping out when they were doing their sheep. Sometimes shepherds would use buildings like this when they weren't so deteriorated, and they would get shelter at the lambing season. Yeah, I'm just looking at all this, like little cutouts on the wall and little holes, and I'm just figuring out if they were meant to be there or if it's just years of erosion. It's mad that that stone's out of there fully, but the wall's just still standing. Same there, there's like literally nothing below that corner section there. And then there's another final building over here that looks, it's from a different era to this one because the stones are just completely different. The way it's constructed just looks completely different, and it looks like more of an industrial building potentially. Yeah, this building here, folks, is the one I was interested to see. And here's an interesting detail on the original architecture. Look, you can see where the door bolt has gone in, so you can imagine the wooden door, maybe on the windy day, rattling back and forward. You would hear it in the wind all through the night, rattling. And that's the kind of noises those old houses would have made. Maybe even the window shutters would have been rattling. You have to imagine the fierce Glen conditions out here. There is remains of some corrugated iron, but that's obviously a later addition. Maybe bits of this had been used by the shepherd and things like that. And you can see it's freshly fallen in this area here. Yeah, it's interesting. I thought there might have been some interesting detail within this section, but it's just mad to see it. There's been so many houses. I think I've counted like 6 houses in this one bit, and then potentially one at the other side of the fence. And it's so cool to keep finding new things. I've said it already on the video, folks, but I just love it when I'm exploring like places that I've never seen. I've just noticed another detail in this house as well. Look at this, folks, on this house front door. Look, they've actually had a hole in there for like the bolt to hold the door shut. And that is insane. I didn't even notice that detail when I first walked in here. And that's why I say often when you walk around the place like a second time, that's when you notice the coolest things. Sometimes the first time you walk around somewhere, it's you're just taking it all in, trying to imagine it originally how it was. Look at this, there's an apple tree here. Look at this here, folks. Look at these apples. I think those little apples, you can't really eat them. I don't know if I should try one of them on the video, see how sour it is. Look, this tree's proper, like, looks like it shouldn't be growing. What? Hey, that tree's just proper ancient. Imagine that, this could have been their wee orchard here. I was tempted to bite one of these apples to see to see how fresh it is. I'm going for it, folks. Because I'm sure these are proper like sour things. Yeah, so this here, folks, is like some high walls right around the side of this. And I can see that one building that I said looked industrial. It's a completely different wall construction compared to the dry stone dikes that lead around the rest of this site. Wow. I was told that there was an old like cheese press somewhere at this site, but from the directions I was given, I think this is like the area I was meant to go to. If this is not the abandoned village I was trying to find, I certainly believe this is an abandoned village of sorts, and it's so mad that I've been able to find it and document it. So I always promise you the realest of adventures on this channel, folks, and today's been no different. We've found a crazy bit of history that we've never seen before and never documented on the channel. And it's been so special just to get back into the middle of history. Now exploring season's back underway. And look at this. Wow. Look at these funguses, folks, on the tree. These things look like they're off space shuttle. or like a different planet. Look at that. Look, the water's dripping out of the bottom of that one there. Look at the yellow colour on there. That's because all those bits stuck to the tree there, that yellow colour, that's the pores coming off that with the wind. That's how these things spread. But they've been growing on that tree for absolute years. I can literally see this water like dripping out of the inside of that right there. Wow, see, stuff like that, folks, it's like from another planet compared to what you normally see. And it's just crazy you get that mix of things. I can still taste that apple. It's a sour apple taste, I'll say. Now that I've been tasting it in my mouth for that few minutes, I would say it's pretty sour. I'm just thinking this is like some old track, look, coming round the side of the village, and here we are on it. You can just imagine the noise of the horse and cart maybe rolling up. But it's like this track's only come up as far as here. So it is interesting, like, to think, like, why would they have a track like that? Trying to imagine the original, like, design of a village is just mad. But it's special as well. I can actually see a detail down here on the wall that I never saw when I came into the site. So we'll go down and take a look at that. So it's just insane the amount of dry stone dikes around this place that I've just been going through or past, just looking at and imagining when they were first constructed. It has been so special to see a site like this. I don't think I've ever explored an entire like abandoned village from this era. This is the era of some of the crofts and old buildings that I go and visit, and it's just mad to see how a village was back at that time. And look, this is what I could see from the distance right here, folks. This is an interesting detail in the wall. From a distance, I thought this may be what's known as a salt box, which is normally contained in a house wall near the fireplace, so they could keep their salt dry in ancient time when they used salt to keep their meat like cured over the winter, and it stopped the meat and stuff going off before the days of fridges. But now that I'm in here and seeing the layout of this building, it's almost like that's been for laying some sort of torch or lantern, maybe so they could light up this area as they worked or as they tended to their sheep. This could be another one of these little building in coves that maybe had a roof at a certain time and there was maybe a business in here. But that's interesting because when I first came to the site, I didn't notice this in any of the house walls. But you can see it's just been a simple like cavity. The only other cavity that we saw on a wall was that massive one in what I theorised maybe like the blacksmith shop. In this area at the start of the video when I first came to this site, I was saying how these stones had been dumped, which I believe is correct, but you can see the evidence here how there has been an original building in this area as well, because this would have been the original construction of the wall. Most likely it looks like there's been a passageway coming around here. The original door has been going in here to that building, and this has been another section, maybe a house as well, or it could have just been sheds. Right folks, I'm now heading back down. I'm going to take a wee look over this side wall here just to see if there's any little nuggets of history down the far side. It's been such a special adventure. The age of this history has been one of the coolest things, like to see history which is this ancient and this old, but still with so much to see. It's just mind-blowing to think of the history. I can see there's original ridges in the ground there. For some reason this is a lot lower at this section. So it's all just been little buildings and little sheds, little houses, little families within this little community. And it's so special to see. Often stones were blasted. They would drill a hole, put dynamite in there and blow it. And that's probably been a big stone that's been in the middle of one of these fields. And this will have been done at a later time. Probably like in the 1900s, I would say, early 1900s. And then once the stone was more manageable, they would have brought it up here and just dumped it out onto the hill. But yeah, like this has been, obviously that original wall has just gone right down the side of the track the way I came in. And this stream, it's just special to see it flowing down through the way they've done this wall. I'll try and get a better clip of it. I never recorded this on the way in. But look, this is what makes it cool. Look at the way that's built there. It's like a proper wee bridge. Think how many litres and gallons of water's flowed out under there over the years since it was first constructed. Yeah, it's just a mad scene. It's like a natural wee waterfall. And I believe that would have been their source of fresh water. That most likely would have carried their sewage and stuff away. Maybe at an ancient time there was a little shed here and they would have gone there to relieve themselves, and then the water would have carried it away from the site. But even this wall, like, as I look down this line, this has been a big, strong wall of its era. And like back at those times, they built things properly, even though a lot of them's dry stone construction. The strength is just incredible. The way they built it, it's like it wouldn't fall apart, it would like fall together. Even if some of the stones got moved or whatever, the walls just stay standing hundreds of years. It's just so long ago, and maybe sites like this were even built onto little settlements from even older times. You have to think one of those little houses there must have been the first little house. And it's just so crazy to think such an ancient time. Like these sheep here at the other side, they're quite excitable, I believe, but they're quite safe there because I'm at this side of the fence and I can just see the purple hills all around. It's mad, the little glens that I go to document these places, often the landscapes are so different, even though they're not that far away from each other. If you compare these hills in this glen compared to the mountains of Glendall in last week's video, or whatever video it was, a few videos ago when I was up Glendall, you can just see the difference in the land, the different character of the land. In Scotland, if you go up a different glen, it's like going to a different country. And often each glen's got its own little weather pattern, depending on, it can be the way the hills are that makes a lot more rain. Or sometimes certain glens is defended from the wind a lot better because of the shape of the hills. So they have their, like, the landscape can just be different because of that. It's just mad though. The noise of this little stream floating its way down, gurgling its way down the hill. Look at that, folks, there's like a row of stones being put in here, and I'm not sure if at an ancient time there's been like a wee wooden bridge over at this area. It almost looks like that would be how wide it would be. All these sheep now are starting to come out onto the path. Right where I am, the sheep have come out into the middle. I was trying to avoid them. They've literally been in the field the whole day, and then as soon as I'm wanting to come down the track, they start running. But the good thing is, I'll be able to just like navigate my way around them, hopefully. I'm just giving them time all to move there. Oh, they're all going into the other field, which is a good thing. That gives me space just to walk freely down here. And another bonus today, folks, I've not seen any ticks at all, which is one thing, if you're ever out for walks in the wilds of Scotland, you should always be careful for in the summer months. But I'm so happy when areas like this become more accessible, the grass and the vegetation starts to die back. All the horrible little beasties, they go in hiding until next summer, and that's really the best time to explore. Through the winter months. The only trouble with Scotland is it gets dark super early in the winter months. Yes, I've just about made it off this site, folks. Once again, we were infiltrating the perimeter here, and we've made it in and out without getting chased by an angry farmer with a shotgun. I just love adventures like this, going into the wilds of Scotland and trying to navigate my way through the terrains till we can record all the coolest places. Sometimes the unseen places have got the coolest little stories of history to tell. Places like that slowly disappearing year upon year. Check out, folks, one of these sheep's just kicking about on the road. That's what you get in Scotland on these country roads, so you have to be super careful if you're driving. Don't forget, folks, tell your friends, tell your family. Butch Carroll's out on these adventures every week, documenting places that's hardly seen and places that's hard to get to. And thanks to everybody that's clicked subscribe over the years. I always try and keep the coolest of content on the channel, and I love just going to these fresh places. So special to see. But anyway, I'm just about back at my car, so I'm going to end this one here. Thanks very much for watching, and I'll be back very soon with the next adventure, wherever I end up going.